Hi, this is Randy Herman, Associate Broker with Keller Williams Realty, welcoming you back to Everything Real Estate. This show is meant to answer all your questions about real estate and introduce you to a host of experts in the field. Now, we've talked in the past two shows about the importance of putting together a real estate team for any transaction, starting with a realtor who can get you the best deals and lead you step by step throughout the process. Then there's the mortgage broker who will pre-qualify you, tell you what you can afford, and help you get a mortgage. Then we talked with a real estate attorney, Andy Schwartz, and we talked about all the legalities involved in real estate and the need to review every document. And we've also talked about real estate from the perspective of a buyer. And you've gone through the process, you've found a house you really liked, we've negotiated, we've had an accepted offer, we've had the purchase and sale agreement reviewed and signed, and then you're off to get a mortgage. And a big part of getting that mortgage is the appraisal. And so today I have the pleasure of having with me Morgan Fennell of the Appraisers Group. I can't thank you enough for being here with us, and wanted to ask you, before we get started and get into the world of appraising, a little bit about yourself and the company.
Sure, thanks Randy. It's great to be here. I'm excited. So I've been in the business about 20 years, and I started out in New Mexico of all places, learned to appraise out there, which is a very difficult place to learn, but I was trained in the right way. I didn't know it at the time, but they took their time and were very thorough with training me, so I think that was a good foundation for my background. And I moved out here in 2000, so I've been here 17 years, and I started actually when I first got out here at the Appraisers Group. And we're a firm located in Belmont, and we do both residential and commercial real estate. We do probably 2,000 or 3,000 appraisals a year. We have 35 to 40 appraisers, both on the commercial side and the residential side.
35 or 40?
Yeah, they're not all in the office. You know, some of them work remotely, but they're a great staff, and we do a lot of bank work, mortgage work, that kind of stuff. But we also do a lot of private client work as well.
Right. Well, that must mean, from your vantage point too, the real estate market is hopping.
Oh, it's been on fire for the last 3 or 4 years, as you know, and it's presents some challenges for sure from our perspective.
So let's dig down right away. And so let me ask you, what is an appraisal?
Appraisal is really, I guess you say, a third party or objective analysis of real property to provide you with an opinion of value on, in this case, I think most people expect on the house, but it could be vacant land, it could be a commercial property. So there's many different valuations possible.
You know, it's kind of interesting because as a realtor, we're always offering our clients comparative market analysis, where we're looking at some of the same metrics that you are, but you have a much more in-depth and legal and professional vantage point. So we're going to go into what's that about.
Great.
But I wanted to ask you, what do you actually do as an appraiser, physically? I mean,
well, so we when we get the assignment, we're talking about a single-family house. We call the homeowner and set up a schedule and inspection that's convenient, ideally for both of us. And we meet them out there, and depending on the size of the house, it could take us as quickly. If you're talking about a condo, it could take 15 minutes because you're not actually measuring the condominium. There's a lot of condominium documents that have the square footage in there. So if you have a 2-bedroom condo, you're kind of taking notes and you're in and out. But if you're in an estate setting out in Weston, say, you could be out there for an hour to an hour and a half. And
so you're actually not only outside the house, you're inside the house.
Absolutely. I typically start on the outside, and I'll do my measurements on the outside. I'll take notes and photographs. Right. I'm observing the condition, the finishes, and so forth, and then I'll make my inside and sketch up a floor plan, and again, take photographs of all the rooms, all the bathrooms, go to the basement, look at the mechanical systems, the electrical system, and then take some more notes on the finishes and the quality, and then I'm back to the office.
Okay. And How hard is it to become an appraiser? I mean, could someone just jump in and take a simple test and become an appraiser?
Well, no, to be a trainee, it's not that difficult. You have to take some classwork to become a trainee, but to actually become there's different levels of licensure, but to become one is fairly difficult. I'm a certified general appraiser, which means I appraise both residential and commercial real estate. So that requires 3,000 hours of experience
Wow.
and several hundred hours of classroom and passing a comprehensive test. There's certified residential licensing, which is similar to that, slightly less. But as a trainee, it takes...
So a trainee, you mean like an apprentice?
An apprentice, yeah. So that takes a trainee or an apprentice several years to really get up to speed and really know what you're doing. So ideally, you're going out with a supervisory appraiser on every single assignment, and they're taking their notes, you're taking your notes, you come back to the office, you write up the report, you do the analysis, you submit it to your supervisor, and they kind of tear it apart, and you go back and you do that again. And so it's not for everybody, but once you're up and running, it can present some unique and fun opportunities.
Right, so you have work outside the office, looking at the house, and then inside the office, doing all your homework and...
Sure, appraisers all have different kind of operations, so a lot of them will go out to a house and they'll already have what we call pulled comparable sales. They'll kind of know the background of the house. They'll look it up through public records. So they'll say, I'm going to try to find the most similar sales that I can without being inside, so that if they find that it's what they thought, they have comparable sales in hand in the community, and they can go take photographs of those, maybe stop at town hall to do some further research, and then come back to the office, and that's where or in many cases, come back to their house and start writing up the report.
Okay, yep. All the homeowner sees is a few seconds of your time, few minutes of your time, so there's a lot more involved.
Absolutely. Actually, the inspection is really the easy part of the appraisal process. So.
And who hires you? I mean, who's your client?
So we have a number of clients. I mean, depending on what you want to do with your business operation, you can have a number of clients. I think most people think we do a lot of work with banks and mortgage companies.
Right.
That's a majority of our work, but we also do a fair amount of work on the private side, as I was mentioning, for attorneys, for CPAs, for financial analysts, we've been hired by towns or municipalities. So there's a broad base of clients out there as an appraiser.
Right. So I was going to say the appraiser gets hired to really show the value of the property, to give a legal opinion as to the value of the property, correct?
Yep, absolutely.
And you had told me that sometimes you're actually in court.
Yeah, on the private side, if you're lucky enough, once in a while you get pulled into court to testify on an appraisal you've done. I was in court recently, and it can be a learning experience and not always fun. But if you've done your homework and you're prepared, it's not that hard.
So I guess sometimes when there's a divorce situation or a family dispute, a trust estates
Correct.
situation.
It's mostly with divorce proceedings.
Right.
We find that we do, I would say, 200 to 300 divorce appraisals per year.
Wow.
But 9 out of 10 of those are settled sometimes last minute. So you have to be ready, because the attorney will call you up and say, we're going to need you, and you usually go over some questions with them and you look at the other side's report. But like I said, it's usually settled last minute, but sometimes it isn't. So you do have to really do your homework and make sure that your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed.
Got it. Okay. So let's really dig down in deep, because I know that sometimes we have almost an adversarial situation between realtors and appraisers, and we'll go into the reasons for that.
Sure.
But what are the metrics that you actually use to determine a property's value?
Well, it can vary depending on the property. Again, if we kind of focus on the
I mean, you had mentioned that there were sold properties, that you use past sold properties.
Right. I mean, that's so. If you're valuing a house, I start from my subject property, and I'll kind of imagine a circle around the property, and I'll get wider and wider within that neighborhood, looking for similar homes. Now, similar is subjective. You can get 10 appraisers out to a property, and you probably get hopefully a fairly narrow range of comparable sales. But people are always saying, well, this is comparable, that's comparable. But I try to look for location, obviously, as a prime one, and the size of the house, the size of the parcel it's on, and really the overall condition
Right.
and appeal. And you want to almost put as you do, we want to put on our buyer's hat and say, well, would a buyer look at my subject property and the ones that I'm going to use in my report, would they think that those are similar?
Right.
Or would they say that's not even in my ballpark, so you might have to think again and try to get the most comparable sales you can.
So in terms of making sure that they're similar, you mean in terms of the size, how many bedrooms they have, whether it has a pool or not? Or
Yeah,
that
I
sort of
mean,
thing?
if you have had all of those things I identically matched, and you had 3 sales on the street that closed 3 months ago, you wouldn't need us. So there's a lot of moving parts. But yes, you want to look at the gross living area of a property, the condition of a property, the style of the home. If you have a 2-story colonial home, you're probably not going to compare it to a single-story ranch, even though it's on the same street. I've had homeowners say, well, they have a single-story ranch, and they say, I've got a great comparable for you. And they give it to me. I say, oh, that's great. And I get back to the office and I look at it, and it's on their street, and it's sold just 3 months ago. Great, but it's a colonial that was built yesterday, and it's 5 times the size. And I say, I can't use this. This is
Well, it's funny because, like ranches, years ago, you couldn't give away a ranch. And now,
Right.
because of the baby boomers, everybody wants a ranch, wants to be on one level.
That's true.
Either ranch or colonial. Those are the 2 most popular right now,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
But you see, because of it's such a hot market, that you actually see that a lot of ranch-style homes are being torn down by developers or builders. If they have a good-sized lot in a desirable community, they'll be torn down, and a new home will be built.
So as a realtor, I always have a question about how you make adjustments, fair adjustments, for differences between properties, because no 2 properties are similar.
Right.
So how do you determine, well, this bedroom's a little bit bigger, or this has an extra bedroom? Are there set numbers that you use?
No, I wish. If there was a book of adjustments out there, I'd like to get my hands on it. But we can't. You can never paint with too much of a fine brush as an appraiser. Like a bedroom being a little bigger or smaller than a bedroom in a comparable house, you better have some pretty good data if you're going to try to make an adjustment for that. We really focus on the condition of a home or the location, and you can really extract an adjustment if you say, I've pulled the last 10 sales from this desirable neighborhood, and I've got to use a sale from outside of the neighborhood, and you look at the last 10 sales in that neighborhood,
Right.
and you can see that there's a price difference just from the location. And you can do that too with a lot of adjustment. In Real Estate 101, they teach you, a paired sales analysis, which is essentially if you have 2 identical properties, but there's one difference. Maybe it's the size. One of them's 2,500 and one of them's 2,000 square feet. And you can see the difference in sale price, then you know exactly why it's sold for a difference because of that size. But that's not real life. I mean, there's numerous adjustments that need to be made, but you try to extract them from the market.
So this is a little bit of art and a lot of science.
Absolutely, it is. There's some art to it, but you need to be able to back up that art with some data. And really, I would say in the last 3 or 4 years on the residential side, data has become a big business, and because of technology, and there's programs out there that can really cull all this data together so that you have that at your fingertips a lot of times. So you need to be able to prove some of your adjustments if a client has a question on that.
Right.
So it's become much more of a science.
Well, that's good.
That is good.
We all want things to be as even as possible,
Yes.
across the board. But there is a factor here that comes into play and where sometimes we bump heads, which has to do with market direction. And because you're just looking backwards, correct? At the
Yes.
past sales of what,
Right.
3 months, 6
Yep.
months?
Yep.
Right? And we're always looking forward as
Right.
realtors.
Right.
And what is now and what is the market now? So can you tell us a little bit how you make adjustments for that?
Sure, and Randy, you're right. I mean, it's as appraisers, we're kind of bound by looking in the rearview mirror. We have to use closed sales, but in a market like we have in the greater Boston area specifically, which has been on fire for the last 3 or 4 or 5 years now, you really have to try to learn, figure out different ways to value properties because of that appreciation that we're seeing. And if you're just relying on 3 6-month-old sales in your report for something that's under agreement that you're appraising, you're probably not going to be able to reach that value.
Right.
Not that that's your goal, but or I should say not to reach that sale price. But what we've been trying to tell all our appraisers, and what I myself have been working on, is we try to look at pending sales, under agreement sales, that are now, they're in multiple listing as an active listing
Right.
until they've actually closed.
Right.
But you can call the broker or the listing agent and say, look, I'm
Oh,
trying
so
to...
that you do that. You call,
Absolutely,
you call
absolutely.
agents.
I call all of the people that are involved in the sales that I'm using, and I say, we need to get that under agreement. We need the contract price on this. If you want to make this deal work, we got to get the contract price on this and that,
Right.
so that you have, if it's listed, say at $500,000,
Right.
but it's selling for $520,000, which a lot of houses are. We need that price there to really help us to keep track of this really hot market.
Well, to help ourselves, realtors often will ask or bring to the appraisal not just the contract of sale,
Right.
but also the comps that we would like to see used. And you're right, sometimes they're off,
Right.
but we try to keep it basically to the metrics that you use.
Yep.
Yeah. Do you take those? Do
Absolutely.
you use those?
Well, I'll definitely take them, and I think that any appraiser that turns them down is not doing their job, because we rely on you. You're really the feet on the ground. You are the pulse of the market. So you're obviously an advocate for your client, and we have to keep that in our minds, in the back of our minds. But you also know the markets, the local markets, a lot better sometimes than the appraiser who's covering a bigger territory. So I absolutely
Well,
rely.
that was one of my questions. Do you have to know your area intimately or know the inside of the houses that you're using as comps?
Well, the first part of that question, yes, you should know the area that you're appraising. It's called locational competency. And
If you're asked to do something up in New Hampshire, you're not going to.
I'm going to turn that down.
Right.
And it's really a violation of USPAP for us to accept an assignment in some place that we've never been before, because you have to tell your client, look, I'll accept this assignment, but I need to make myself, I have to get up to speed on this local, and so I'm going to do that by interviewing brokers, going to the assessor's department. That's how I'm going to get knowledgeable on this. But a lot of times, luckily for us, as I said, we have a fairly large firm, and we have people that we keep in certain geography areas so that they don't have to go outside of it, so they know 2, 3, 4, 5 towns very well.
So you tap on the
Absolutely.
local,
We say,
local talent.
you've got an order come in for Drake-it, we have somebody in Drake-it. You have an order in Duxbury, we have somebody in Duxbury. You have an order out in Framingham. So we have appraisers all over the place and that's what they know the markets. They've developed good relationships with local brokers that are active in that market.
Yeah. Well, they say that realtors help make the market. So obviously it's the buyers and the sellers who are determining the market and supply and demand, et cetera. But we're helping to promote the sellers and push the prices up, and for the buyers to make it within a reasonable amount, a marketable amount. But it all has to be backed up by what you do.
Right.
And so are there any times when you're finding that you have to stand your ground against
Absolutely.
the price that has been agreed to?
Absolutely. I mean, I always shake my head at what people are paying in this market, but I can give you an example. As an appraiser, what you really have to do, say you go out to a property again that was listed at $500,000, and you talk to the listing agent, and they say, yeah, there were 10 offers, and they were all over asking, and 8 of those offers were between $515,000 and $525,000. But we got one offer at $575,000, and that's what we went with. As an appraiser, you have to be really careful. If you're going to try to appraise and say, well, is that the definition of market value?
Do you try to meet the price?
No, not in that case. No, I mean you have to meet the definition of market value, and a lot of times is it a knowledgeable and prudent buyer that is accepting or making an offer that's $50,000 higher than the pack that was at $515 to $525. If you have that situation, you have to be really careful as an appraiser that you're not trying to push a value. You might come in at $525 because that's the market. The market's been, that's the definition. If you have 10 buyers that are telling you that they're willing to pay $515,000 to $525,000, who are you as an appraiser to say, no, I think it's worth what it was listed for at $500?
Right.
I mean, you're not doing your job. But if you're also on the other end saying, oh yeah, I'm going to make it worth, I'm going to make it work to get up to $575,000, you have to be very careful and be able to back that up.
Right. Well, as a realtor, we're always concerned because If, for example, there's a difference of $50,000 and the bank is only going to lend on the smaller amount, the buyer has to bring in more cash to the table.
Absolutely.
Or the seller has to reduce his price.
Right.
Right?
I mean,
Or there's no deal.
We run into that even in this hot market. You know, there are some deals that we can't meet, and the buyers are just going to have to come to closing with more cash, unfortunately.
Right. Well, you certainly know your statistics and what's been going on in this market. You know, with in all of Massachusetts, year over year from last year, prices have gone up 5 to 6%, and in houses and condos, and certainly in certain towns like Medford, they've gone up astronomically, in almost 20%. Or it's crazy. It's kind of crazy. So how do you keep up with that?
Well, we really try to keep track, through multiple listing and through Warren Group and through various records, the appreciation that within certain communities that we're seeing. Now, you mentioned 5% statewide. It's really, I think, a tale of two cities here, or two states here, really, is that if you're talking about the greater Boston area, inside of 128 in particular, values are up much more than 5%, sometimes 15, 20, 25% year over year.
Yeah.
If you go out past Worcester, values are not going up like that.
Right.
They're level at best. And so some of those communities haven't even caught up to pre-2008 recession levels.
Really?
Whereas, a lot of communities around here have caught up and gone beyond that high mark back in 2006 and 2007.
Such a demand for real estate now in the greater Boston area.
So we try to keep, to answer your question, we try to keep track of that, and we make adjustments in our report for older sales if we have to use them up to the present, a time adjustment. And those are some of the easiest adjustments to extract in the market, because you have so much data on time.
Well, it's good to hear you take those into account.
Absolutely.
Because honestly, if you
have
don't, well, let me ask you something. So suppose you come up with an appraisal and it isn't what the agreed upon price is, what's in the contract. Can your appraisal be disputed?
Absolutely. And I think it probably happens more than we realize, because usually the homeowner or the buyer will take it directly to their client, which is not us. It's the bank or the mortgage company.
Right.
And they will contact us sometimes if they feel needed, and they'll put us in direct contact with the buyer or the homeowner if it need be. And I'm always available and open to listening to what people have to say about the critique of the appraisal.
Right.
We're not perfect, and sometimes we will miss stuff, whether it be on the inside in the interior inspection. We will miss something, a bathroom or a finished basement. I mean, it's hard to believe. I don't. But so if there's those kind of corrections, absolutely, I'm going to make those. And if they can present an appraiser with comparable sales that are better than what we believe we had in the report, or more comparable, then we missed those, and we should have used those.
So you will take into account
We
sometimes.
will, absolutely. We will. We do that.
If there's good
time
data.
to time. Yeah, you have to have good data. I mean,
Right.
a lot of times, as I've said, homeowners, they always think their house is the best on the block, and so, it's not always comparable data.
Right. So I've sort of asked you this question, but it comes up all the time. Actually, it came up last night. I was speaking to a possible client, and she said, oh, well, I had an appraisal on my house, and it was for tax reasons, so we told him to make it low, and he came in really low. And, equity banks want to make the appraisal higher because they want to lend more on the house. These are kind of impressions that a lot of people have about appraisals and appraisers. Is that true?
No, it's not. It's not true. Our job as appraisers, when you're talking on the residential side here, is to really meet the definition of market value, whether it's for an estate tax filing or for a sale of a home. You should be going through the same process regardless of the use of the appraisal. Now, we're asked in estate tax filings to do a lot of times retrospective appraisals where somebody unfortunately has passed away maybe 6 months ago, maybe 9 months ago, and we have to put ourselves back in that time frame on that date and look for comparable sales that occurred in and around that date. But 9 times out of 10, it's current market value.
Right.
And yes, when you hear estate sale, you usually think low value. That's what everybody wants. But if you've done your job, you have a range of value, an adjusted range of value within your report, and you can only reconcile within that range. So, we try to hit market value regardless of the use of the report.
Okay, well, it's good to know.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. No,
So-
that is a perception out there.
yeah, exactly. So let me ask you, what are some of the problems you come up against? Like, I'm always curious how you can appraise a house that's so different from every other house. I mean, we have these colonial houses that have been redone, but especially like nowadays, greenhouses, carbon neutral houses.
Right.
What do you do for those?
Well, you as an appraiser, it's really incumbent on you to become educated and informed on the trends and the new products or unique finishes and materials that a house may offer. So, I have, and people in my office have taken, there's some really good courses out there taught by experts in appraisal, in energy efficiency. And so as an appraiser, you go to a house, you need to be able to recognize the materials that are in that house. Say it has solar panels. You need to know what questions to ask the homeowner about that solar system, because you can actually extract an adjustment for solar panels versus non-solar panels. And it used to be in the appraisal industry.
So tell me, solar panels, in your opinion, make the house more valuable?
They do, and it's only going to increase. I mean, it's the more data that we get, the more homes that have that on there, we'll be able to extract more better and better adjustments. But yes, they save you money in the long term on your electricity, which you can actually discount back to the present as an adjusted value.
It's funny because as a realtor, we encounter people who have solar panels on their house, but it doesn't always make the house more valuable because sometimes they're leased or they have to pay them off or there's other issues with them.
Yeah, no, leased panels are a different ballgame altogether. But and if you have a really old system that's 25-year-old and very inefficient, that's probably not going to add a lot of value to your house.
So the same kind of metrics and adjustments can be made for all kinds of houses, an old colonial from the 1700s? Or?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a different one. If I were to appraise an antique home from 1790, say, you might even go outside of the community that it's in to find comparable sales, because in that case, you're really focusing on the buyer. Who's the buyer of this? Buyers of antiques are really passionate about antique homes, but the majority of buyers are probably not that passionate about it. So you might go to a different community if it's comparable next door that has a 1810 home that's same size, and say, this is, if a buyer of this home is not going to find in this community, they're going to search for another community. And so you really have to get kind of creative with the comparable sales you use when it comes to these kind of unique properties.
And say, well, listen, I can't thank you enough. You've been so informative. And,
absolutely.
How can people get in touch with you if they have questions?
Well, I'm at the Appraisers Group. My name's Morgan Fennell again, and we're at Value at Appraisers Group if you have any questions, or our phone number is 617-962-347. I'm sorry, that's my cell phone number. You can call me there too.
Yeah, give us your social security number too.
617-489-2003 is our office line, but feel free to give me a call about any questions or any of our staff, and we'd be happy to talk to you.
Can't thank you enough.
Absolutely.
It's been great.
It's been great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.